Scott Mutter has said that a culture and what it produces is made possible by and is reflective of the knowledge that underlies it. The management of knowledge would be important to us for that reason alone, but there are many more compelling reasons. The world is moving inexplicably in a new, challenging direction, and we are forced to move with it or get trampled by those who are striving to keep up with the changes. Let me share with you some of the realities we can anticipate for our world by the year 2005. First, there will be a greater sense of urgency. While there will be greater opportunities, and with the emphasis on speed and the power of new technology, there will be smaller windows of opportunity. Second, there will be more risk-taking, simply because speed's companion is risk. Third, processes will be simpler. While productivity improvements demand simplicity, knowledge and technology will make it possible. Fourth, we must learn to have more tolerance for conflict. The demands of our customers and the challenges of our competitors will constantly be at odds with our organizational preferences. We will have to learn to accept constant change, particularly when working across borders. Fifth, we will have to learn to work in teams. The nature of a fragmented workforce and virtual work arrangements will require us to be more collaborative. Sixth, the pressures of a constantly changing, competitive world will demand that we learn to relax, to maintain a better work-life balance. Our health and the health of our families will demand it. Finally, in 2005, there will be a greater premium placed on knowledge. And remember, chance favors the prepared mind. Now, how do we learn? We learn in two ways. Explicitly, we are taught by someone, or tacitly, we learn experientially, by trial and error. And we learn by ourselves, or in a group. This learning, knowledge window, is being influenced today by two factors: core competence and communities of practice. I said earlier that we would talk about communities of work. Increasingly, organizations are focusing on the significance of their core competencies, those unique skills and capabilities that provide a competitive advantage. It is these competencies that allow organizations to expand their influence in the marketplace and keep their competitors at bay. But as the workforce becomes more fragmented, and when competence rests within the brains of just a few, the organization is at a disadvantage unless it learns to transfer that knowledge to others, to institutionalize it. One way to do this is through communities of practice. Communities of practice are small formations of people, anywhere from 3 to 30, who do things together. Like a successful team, they can't be mandated, but instead they emerge in the course of work by identifying their interdependence and their mutual values. They know how to obtain information from one another and how to share with one another. Members of a community of practice know what others really know, and they know how to evoke that know-how for their own purposes. They use common tools and processes to which outsiders have to be introduced, and their identities, that is, how they see themselves, have changed. One thing that is important to know about communities of practice is how practices are viewed in organizations. There are two kinds of practices in an organization. Those that are authorized, the practices that are structured around the work, as the organization perceives how the work is to be done. The second is emergent practices, those that evolve by the group's actual work practices. Managers who focus only on the authorized and ignore the emergent will lose the capability to capture the core competencies and to facilitate the learning of the group. Let me give you an example of how a knowledge management initiative can affect emergent learning. It begins with the work that has to be accomplished and factors in how people really work together and share what they know. At Xerox, our customer service engineers are now using a system called Eureka. It's a means of sharing knowledge about repairing machines. Eureka is an online, web-accessed database which allows customer reps to post questions and search an expanding inventory of previously answered questions about machines, diagnostics, repair hints, etc. The program started as a result of some anthropological research at our Palo Alto Research Center to determine how service reps shared war stories. It has been successful because customer reps trust the tips they receive and they are willing to share their own experiences with others. The sharing of experiences in a group of equals is one of the goals of knowledge management. Further, each of the people who use a tip bring their own experience to bear, and therefore knowledge continues to expand as it is used. Unlike most sharing programs, Eureka has sustained itself without the intervention of management. One reason is that the customer rep's name remains associated with his or her tip throughout its lifetime. Just like a bull session, the reps are motivated by a desire to help their associates, while at the same time increasing their professional stature and reputation. Further, they don't want their names associated with questionable advice. The anthropologists learned that early on. This is just one example of knowledge and the web. I'll share some others in a few minutes. If you think of knowledge management as a weave of the organization, its processes, technology, and people, you then see the World Wide Web as a means to make the weave work. The Internet gives employees the capability to access both the organization's authorized data and that which is emerging from its leading-edge work groups. Now, before we get too far into the use of technology, I want to change course for just a moment and talk about how competitive intelligence gathering and benchmarking fits into the management of knowledge. Benchmarking is defined as a continuous, systematic process for evaluating the products, services, and work processes of organizations that are recognized as representing the best practices for the purpose of organizational improvement. There are many reasons for doing benchmarking, but the 5 best reasons are meeting your end-user customer requirements, establishing goals that are based on a clear view of external conditions, determining true measures of productivity, attaining a competitive position, and becoming aware of and searching for your industry's best practices. That is why benchmarking is often called the process of an ongoing search for best practices. There are many models for benchmarking, but perhaps the simplest is a 4-phase model: establishing a study plan, conducting a benchmarking study, diagnosing what you have learned, and internalizing the results and taking action. The model is really nothing more than 15 questions. Under the first phase, establishing a study plan, there are 3 questions. What will be benchmarked? Who will be benchmarked? And how will the data be collected? In the second phase, conducting the study, there are also 3 questions. Who conducts the study? How do you conduct a planned visit? And what are the ethics of benchmarking? In the third phase, diagnosing the data, there are 4 questions. Is the competition better? How much better? Why are they better? And what can we learn? The final phase, internalizing the results and taking action, has the most questions. Have all the stakeholders bought into this process? Do our goals have to be changed? Have the new goals been communicated? Are actions being taken to change? And is our progress being monitored? Now, I have talked about benchmarking in the past, so I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on the model, other than to take a few minutes on what is done with the data once it has been gathered. Because what is learned is knowledge. Knowledge about your industry and your competition. After you have analyzed the data from a benchmarking study, the benchmark should be obvious. A benchmark represents the level of performance which is clearly superior and is achieved by at least one of the partners who participated in the study. It is the gap between your organization's performance and the leader, or vice versa, on whatever subject you have studied. Once you have identified the gap and the leader, the key question is why? What is driving that level of superior performance? Is it productivity investment? Is it technology? Is it specialized training? Or workforce issues like pay or hours of work? After you have completed your assessment of why a performance gap exists between yourself and your partner, the next point is to consider, what is the longer-term effect? Will the disadvantage between you and the leader improve or get worse over time? The answer to this question is found by projecting the gap based on expected future performance and trends. In fact, if you know the reasons for the gap, have some knowledge of the benchmarking leader's past trends, and have identified their drivers, then you have everything you will need to make a reliable projection of the future. The kinds of projections you should make are 3 to 5 year horizons based upon historical productivity trends, the gap size, and what people closest to the work think their future productivity may be. Finally, determine if the gap is widening or closing, and then estimate the size of the gap over the next several years. The current gap size, the historical productivity trends, and the projected future gap. And then finally, how will this knowledge be used? And there are 2 categories of action for you. The first is tactical. These are the real gains in productivity, achieved through gradual, deliberate changes to your organization's processes. Tactical actions are taken to achieve an objective that has been planned to be accomplished in 1 or 2 years. There are also strategic actions. When a benchmarking partner's leadership has been achieved by an industry-leading best practice, it is most often as the result of some strategic planning. To overcome a performance leader's superiority, that is the result of strategic planning, usually requiring some strategic actions. Unfortunately, knowing your industry's leaders and what they do well and why, and implementing corrections is never enough. There's a more important audience our organizations serve, our customers. The ability to provide unique solutions to a customer's business problem is a hallmark of a knowledge-rich company and a great source of competitive advantage to those who do it well. Knowledge management is an area that benchmarkers can both contribute to and draw from. Benchmarking organizations can tap into concepts of knowledge management to help organize future benchmarking studies and disseminate them to the organizations where they are needed. Benchmarkers can contribute to knowledge management initiatives by documenting the best practices and identifying areas where these practices can have a large impact. This is a good place to point out that organizations learn basically in 4 ways. They learn by simulation. There are a number of computer programs available which workers can use to test various models. And computer modeling will become even more powerful as computers become more powerful. Organizations can also learn by prototyping their hypothesis. Certainly among engineering groups, this will continue to be an effective learning tool. But today, organizations are increasing their knowledge by vicarious learning more and more, both through communities of practice, sharing with one another, and by benchmarking, that is, seeing how others do things, and by online learning. In fact, the web is fast becoming the world's favorite place to seek new information and increase competitive knowledge. If you doubt it, let me make 3 points about knowledge and the web. First, today, 4% of the world's population accesses the World Wide Web. By 2010, it is estimated that 50% will. Second, web-based distant learning methods will extend course hours in a world of time famine. Third, universities produce 2 products, education and degrees. As the web becomes more able at producing the first, what will happen to the second? And will it matter? But before we go on with the integration of competitive intelligence gathering and knowledge management, I said that I would offer a definition for knowledge management. I think it will help with our better understanding the comprehensive nature of managed knowledge. The definition is this: knowledge management is the systemic leveraging of information and expertise to improve organizational innovation, productivity, and competency. This definition helps to explain why knowledge management has become popular. It is a response to changing needs in the workplace, including the need for geographically dispersed business teams to work together, the need to organize rapidly expanding bodies of knowledge, the competitive requirement for fast access to knowledge, and the need to maintain knowledge in the face of personal turnover. The trend is propelled by new enabling technology in communications and systems. I want to share with you some examples of technology support of knowledge management systems. At Xerox, at our facility in Palo Alto, they have coined the phrase ubiquitous networking. The term means that computer-aided devices can be placed anywhere to allow a constant variety of networking. At PARC, Xerox has created what is called the Jupyter environment. By connecting multimedia devices of text, graphics, audio, and video with individual offices and conference rooms, PARC employees have the ability to call anyone, see anyone, create a group meeting without anyone having to leave their office. And they have the capability of digitally recording both the audio and visual components of the meeting, including the written information on whiteboards and typed into a PC. This leads to a rather unique archiving of data. At Xerox, we have also implemented DocuShare, which is an intranet-enabled capability which allows any person or team to establish their own network sites for the purpose of maintaining files, communicating documents, seeking confidential inputs, etc. At Winchester Business Systems, they provide additional proof that knowledge management systems are a reality today. Winchester's customer support system is a good example. The Winchester system gives customers access to whatever they need to know quickly and accurately. They are able to access catalogs, product specs, CAD/CAM drawings, etc. System also can link the customer directly to systems for placing or tracing an order. Organized knowledge can open up communications and creativity around any large organization. The key to success is to direct the knowledge management efforts toward critical areas. I want to suggest that there are 7 areas where knowledge management is critical. First, in the area of product development. Second, in the area of customer service. Third, in all-around production. Fourth, in highly regulated industries, such as utility and energy companies. Fifth, in project management, as knowledge management offers the ability to manage projects faster and more efficiently. Sixth, in the business development and sales process. For example, when sharing information about a client. And seventh, in strategic planning. In the case of Ernst & Young's system for organizing knowledge for sales and delivery of complex consulting systems, the company's need for knowledge management is clear. Ernst & Young's product is knowledge, and salespeople and consultants need fast access to knowledge services such as business research, to past studies and cases, and to the worldwide network of subject matter experts. One exciting Ernst & Young product produced by this comprehensive process is called the Power Pack. For each major practice area, the Power Pack contains the key presentations, the promotional materials, white papers, articles, and case histories necessary to describe the practice and present the company's approach to client problems. The balanced scorecard concept represents a new philosophy for strategic management. Renaissance Worldwide is the leading consulting organization and proponent of this philosophy. The idea behind a balanced scorecard 6 years after its introduction is widely known. It is a document that provides measures and targets for a variety of indices of the health of a business. Measures not limited to the financial perspective, but also encompassing the customer perspective, the internal perspective, and an employee learning perspective. What companies are now learning about this technique is that its power comes not from having a generic set of measures, but rather from having a set of measures that are specifically linked to a strategy the company is trying to execute. For example, when Chemical Bank wanted to build revenue by selling a wider range of services to existing customers, it needed to have salesmen promoting services that would customarily be sold by other units of the bank. Therefore, they included a measure of cross-selling to assure that this behavior would be incentivized. So how do knowledge management and competitive intelligence fit together? Transco, the British gas pipeline company, provides us with a good example. Natalie Gaines is Transco's knowledge manager and benchmarker. She uses tools of both disciplines synergistically. Natalie is her company's benchmarking gatekeeper. Among the responsibilities of this position are to assure that reports on internal practices and information from competitors are fed into the knowledge management framework and are effectively deployed throughout the organization. Information so recorded is accessible not only by Transco people, but also by people throughout the other 2 units of this newly demerged British gas company, and by regulators who use the information to get a reading on the competitiveness of the regulated entity, Transco. The sharing philosophy assures that all information help in the coordination of functions is readily shared and that potentially redundant benchmarking efforts are caught before they are started. John Henderson from Boston University sees knowledge management as a combination of leveraging expertise, leveraging knowledge assets, and personal development, all in the service of improved performance. He cited a number of applications that may well be benchmarks in these areas. British Petroleum, for example, dealt with an Alaskan drilling rig breakdown, an emergency costing the company thousands of dollars per hour, by mobilizing a worldwide team of experts and connecting them with engineers on site through quick video and computer hookups. The access to expertise allowed the rig to be back online in 6 hours. The company institutionalized the practice by putting the technology in place on offshore rigs and other inaccessible places to speed the availability of their expert resources. A key step that British Petroleum took that enabled such a result is the after-action review, a concept borrowed from the Army, which assures that learning comes from an activity becomes explicitly documented so that it can be shared and used wherever it is useful. Texaco witnessed firsthand how benchmarking can change important processes at a very high level in the company. Texaco's planning and budget system had grown out of control over many years, and a 12-person team of high flyers from operations, finance, and senior management was put together to tackle the problem. The team's documentation of the as-is state of the system showed clearly that Texaco had big problems. Strategic and tactical plans required the completion of some 400 line items of data for hundreds of organizational entities. There were few standards. For example, the word oil had different meanings in different parts of the company. There were too many systems, including more than 700 separate formats of performance reports. No data was easily accessible, and gathering data was such a consuming task that there was no time left to analyze the data. The benchmarking aha occurred when senior managers went out on site visits to Motorola and other world-class organizations. When they observed that good strategic decisions could be based on as few as 7 line items of information per business, the excesses of their own system became apparent. The end result was that the team revitalized the planning process. They cut data requirements by 2/3 and put key information at the fingertips of management, thereby providing both the means and the time available for analysis and reflection. Truly a high visibility success story. I hope you have found this session helpful and that you are somewhat inspired to examine the significance of knowledge management for your own organization. I hope that you may see the value in becoming the knowledge management champion in your own company. If you would like to know more, let me recommend the following. World Wide Web, knowledgebusiness.com. Teltech.com. business-intelligence.co.uk. xrce.xerox.com. dataware.com. fulcrum.com. and agentware.com. As I have in past conferences, let me leave you with this quotation from the philosopher Eric Hoffer. In time of drastic change, it is the learners who inherit the future. The learned find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnigan. Let us continue with the second question and answer session. Our first question is from Mexico. It is from El Instituto Tecnológico de Ocotlán.